Hi, I'm Ivan Ross, and this is my developmental history. So my developmental history really begins here at my house that I was born in and raised in. Walking down this driveway and towards my home shows where most of my development took place. This rural setting provided shelter for my parents, Scott and Lisa, starting in 1993. In fact, my dad built this house himself, along with help from family and friends, while living with his then wife of 5 years in a rental home. It didn't take long for this place to be filled with the sounds of a family. My oldest sister Audra was born a short year later in 1994 and was quickly followed by my other older sister Emma in 1995. My mom and dad had both always dreamed of having a big family. My dad was one of 6 children and my mother was one of 3 respectively. They decided to have more kids and welcomed their 3rd child into the world in 1997, and this was me. My dad was no longer the only man of the house, and my mom was eager to introduce me to my new home and family. September 24th, 1997 serves as a jumping off point to explore the rest of my developmental history. So the cute baby pictured later is me, which I know might be hard to tell at this given moment. Growing up, my mom always remarks that I was an easy baby. I didn't cry too much or cause too many headaches. One thing all family members remark, however, that I was always putting things in my mouth. Now this aligns with Piaget's stages. At this point in my life, I was well within the sensory motor phase, learning by testing, and I could quickly discover what was made for good food or what didn't. This is also the stage when I started playing peekaboo, a game that captured my imagination because I had not yet developed object permanence. At this stage, additionally, Brofenbrenner would highlight that my sphere of influence was small, and it consisted of my own parents, family, and siblings. This micro-level community would grow with time. This period was also fundamental for my development in terms of brain development. By the time I was 2, my brain was almost an adult size. This period also is marked by me developing a speech impediment and made communication difficult. Despite this, and despite my own lack of memories, my parents say that I was happy, yet a mischievous child with my basic needs met by Maslow's standards. Living in the woods, I had begun developing, as Gardner put, keen naturalistic intelligence, something that would be only grown in time. I also idolized my parents, and especially my dad, who I wanted to be just like. Preschool age brought a major transition. I enrolled in a Head Start program, something developed by Brofenbrenner. I would end up attending Head Start for 2 years, in which I developed immensely. This program, while not specifically mentioned, was structured a lot like a Montessori program. We spent a lot of time in class doing what we wanted. I especially enjoyed arts and crafts. My mom still has a big tub of all this artwork that I created. We also had play equipment that was miniature versions of real things, especially things like kitchen sets, tools, and outfits. This, however, was more than play. It was a style of independent learning that was student-guided, something Montessori stressed. This also demonstrated my ability to pretend, something directly aligned with Piaget's pre-operational stage that I was in. The crisis at this age, according to Erickson, is initiative versus guilt. From this, I really do believe I developed the positive virtue of purpose during my preschool years. With frequent parent-teacher-student meetings and activities, the program also demonstrated the importance of learning when involving the family. Preschool also provided the framework of speech therapy, something that changed the way I spoke and communicated with the world. This is also the time I met my first friends, Dakota and Cody. Together, the 3 of us greatly enjoyed our preschool years. Also, I welcomed a new brother at this stage, something that would forever alter my life in a positive direction. In elementary school, I continued the precedence of being extremely introverted and quiet. I know this is hard to imagine now, but when I was younger, I barely spoke at school, saving most words for home instead. In school, we learned a variety of topics, and I quickly latched onto history as my favorite. Ever since I remember, I have always loved history, and I remember checking out so many history books from the library. I loved reading the Bailey School Kid books as well, and especially Gary Polson books in my later years of elementary school. We learned a lot about math, something that aligns with the concrete operational phase outlined by Piaget. My elementary school years are also marked with the industry versus inferiority stage that Erickson talks about, in which I developed the positive outcome of pride. I took a proud stance in the grades I achieved, in my consistent honor roll appearances, and my first place finish in the Olympiad tests. This was also coupled with my service in student council, though I was kicked out of the president position in 6th grade, which is a story for another day. My morality, as Goldberg notes, was still aligned with the conventional stage. I was constantly concerned with being a good boy and motivated to stay out of trouble. As my parents juggled 4 kids, I always felt appreciated, and I would rank myself on the esteem stage of Maslow. Yet I really wanted to be unique. One way to help this was to play in sports. I played t-ball 1 year and abandoned that ship quickly. I found an internal love for football starting in 1st grade, something that I would carry with me for many years. My language of learning, thus, was grounded not only in auditory or visual ways, but also in a tactile dimension. Being in 4-H also provided a new space to learn, and welcoming the final Ross kid, Amelia, impacted the community I learned within. Now with 5 kids, I was firmly in the middle of the bunch. Middle school is a hard time for a lot of students, and I was no exception. I struggled to make strong friendships and spent most of my time outside of school at home and with my family. This was a time my love of music grew exponentially, and I continued to play football but fell out of favor with the sport in 8th grade. And I didn't make the basketball team in 7th grade either, so I felt a strong sense of role confusion as outlined by Erickson. One of the most positive things about my middle school experience was my teacher, Mr. Page. He taught social studies, and he ensured that in his class I was in the right zone of proximal development, as coined by Vygotsky. He often asked me if the class was too easy and even gave me a separate class project. This was to ensure that I both applied effort into a stimulating schoolwork, but also to allow me experience in depth in learning about history, something that he knew I would love. This is a good example of Bruner's spiral curriculum, and my continued exploration motivated me to learn more and more, showcasing discovery learning. This was also possible by me being in a formal operational stage, as outlined by Piaget. I could begin to reason abstractly and form the capabilities to learn how to do small research projects. Now, I was still a very quiet person and very linguistically, verbally, as well as naturalistically aligned. My morality was still largely based on perception and reputation, and the answers to the Heinz dilemma would probably have been, no, she should have not stolen the bread. I was intensely focused on my grades and sports and dreamt of being an archaeologist much like Indiana Jones. I also felt the same insecurities as most middle schoolers, though I reflect on this time as mostly happy. High school brought new changes for me in a lot of ways. I was able to take a larger variety of classes, many of them of AP, so I was always in my ZPD. I had stopped playing sports, but I was involved in class council, National Honor Society, my church's youth group, and the various jobs I held. I was also meeting a lot of new people, including Ashton, who became my new best friend, and later Mo, who I still am very close with.
Jinky Scoob.
High school firmly locked me into Erickson's identity versus role confusion as I struggled to find more about myself and my future desires. Powered by procurement of Maslow's lowest needs, I was able to reach the esteem stage and felt belonging in my newfound friends. I really enjoyed art classes and still actively draw on basically everything. I guess this is a habit I just never kicked. Speaking of art, these classes provided the backdrop for meeting Ashton. Connecting on mutual interests, we became quick friends. We both loved music, movies, and I still remember our first conversation when we recommended albums for one another after being placed in a random seating chart. My classes also began to involve more dialogue, and I slowly came out of my shell. In Opening Minds, we see the importance of a dialogic classroom, and my communication skills and language developed greatly. My visual, spatial, interpersonal, and logical mathematical intelligences began to shine in physics, math, and English classes. I saw my meso and exo systems grow as church became more important, as did politics and jobs. Malaguzzi's 100 languages were met in artistic and logical ways, while my learning grew year after year. Sophomore year, I decided to grow my hair out, and my sister always said that I personally grew alongside it. By senior year, it had become my trademark, and it was something that it's hard to imagine me having now. My family relationships were still massively important to me, though my parents and I argued a lot more. My oldest sister, Audra, passed away in a car accident my junior year of high school, and this would forever alter my worldview. I grew more relaxed and tried to take every moment as it came, because you never know which moment would be your last. Ultimately, after high school, I decided to come to Butler and study history and political science. I came in with a strong notion of practicing law post-undergrad, but that quickly changed. At college, I met what I now consider my best friends, many of which I lived around my first year. I got extremely lucky when I was placed in a room with Joey, and we hit it off immediately. We were both long-haired kids from rural America, now living in the middle of Indianapolis. Our friend group grew, and my first year really cemented my extroverted qualities. College also provided a spot for ZPD, and I learned a lot. My morality also began to shift, putting myself in the social contract stage. My hierarchy of needs was also met as my intelligence were further strengthened. The other day I took a test of what my strongest of Gardner's 8 categories are, and the strongest one came up naturalistic. My personal experiences allowed for connections with materials, something mentioned by doing experimental learning. This is also an important example of constructionism, for my worldview was beginning to be more aligned with what I was learning inside and outside of the classroom. Also, working a variety of jobs impacted my world outlook. So far, I've worked in the bookstore for 3 years, I worked at a state park, I've been a camp counselor, and I currently serve as both an RA and an intern for Thrive Nonprofit. College has encapsulated some of the best and worst times to date, and it's also the time in which I donated 9 inches of hair. Currently, I'm undecided what to do with my future, but I really value working at a nonprofit and helping people, so I think I want to combine these efforts in some ways. College for me has provided a setting to grow socially, emotionally, and cognitively, while also exploring the world and my relationship with it. So back at my house and looking at my backyard, this is a good time to reflect on who I am at the moment. I'm a junior who's going to be a senior. The world is getting real as I decide what I want to do in life. I'm fortunate to have so many teachers, coworkers, and friends to stand by my side as I continue with my journey. I'm also especially thankful for my girlfriend Megan of nearly 5 months. Megan and I met as camp counselors last summer, and she has grown to mean a lot to me. My family also continue to have a massive impact on my life as I am faced with stress, indecision, and uncertainty. Being a first-generation college student and growing up in relative poverty, I am thankful for every opportunity given to me, especially coming here to Butler. As my morality has developed, I've learned things aren't always black and white. Being in Erickson's 6th stage, I have felt the positive virtue of love and family, friends, and Megan herself. Current neuroscience research gives me understanding of connecting where I am now to where I want to be in the future. These experiences and development will continue to have a fundamental impact on the future I seek in the world we live in.